There were cases, I think the airline example was one where a chatbot gave an answer to an end customer that turned out to be wrong.
One question that always comes up is, what about security? What about data privacy when you have applications in the cloud?
The cloud really changed a lot in terms of how we think about infrastructure, computing and storage infrastructure. It's been kind of a logical development of this virtualization.
How do you see the future of AI actually from a software development point of view? Corsin, welcome to my podcast living room here.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Carsten.
Corsin, I invited you today because I really value your profound experience in software development, the way you translate business requirements into potential future solutions, and also the way you share your expertise in different juries or boards here in Switzerland, for example. And plus, you have a very strong ambition that you always want to lead with innovation. Does that roughly describe you?
That sounds right. I can take it.
I'm very happy. I really welcome you today here. And we want to deep dive a little bit into the huge realm of software. And let's really get started with what we actually do, or what you actually do. You have 20 years experience in software development. And if you today come to a new client, then you never have a greenfield situation. There's always existing solutions, so-called legacy there. Now, how do you build then future-proof new solutions based in this environment?
Yeah, the legacy, that can be annoying, but it's a reality. It's something we have to work with and deal with, but it can also be interesting. I mean, the legacy is there for a reason. Maybe the people are not happy with it anymore, the users, but it was created years ago with a purpose, and it was there to solve a problem. It's a solution to a problem. So we need to learn from it. There's always legacy around. There are systems you need to talk with and integrate in an overall solution. So that's not something to be scared of. It's something to face directly ahead.
Okay, not to be scared of is a good topic, but then how to develop new value, new solutions based in this legacy environment, which you say cannot be taken away?
Yeah, it depends on the use case. We really need to say, what are the important things that we need to improve? What kind of options do we have? Can we replace these old systems? Can we renovate them? Renovating is often much better for the wallet of the customer and also gives you results much more quicker than if you have to go and replace a system. Because replacing a system, you use a lot of know-how and knowledge that went into the old system. So that's always something we need to deal with.
And do you employ specific technologies that help in this transition to something new?
Different technologies. Of course, there are tools that are specifically contain adapters. Apache Camel is a good example there that has adapters for a lot of legacy protocols and helps you to integrate older systems, legacy systems into new environments. There are architectural patterns that you can use to deal with legacy systems and, for example, hide some of the impacts they have. So if you have a legacy system, for example, that uses a really old communication protocol, things like Corba, or so, you don't really want that in your modern infrastructure today. So what you normally do is create an adapter, a gateway that translates from these old protocols into the new modern protocols, so it fits in with communication architecture and infrastructure that we have these days.
Interesting. And building on this one, there's also one thing that is around LinkedIn and many other people talking about software, that cloud is the answer to many problems, right? So cloud can help make us faster in the software deployment, in running also certain developments and applications. How do you see it? Is it really the answer to everything in this realm?
As usual, it's an answer to a lot of questions and a lot of problems, but it also brings along a new set of problems. So that's nice for us as software developers. We don't get out of work just because there's a new tool. But to be serious, I mean, the cloud really changed a lot in terms of how we think about infrastructure, computing and storage infrastructure. It's been kind of a logical development of this virtualization. We get further and further away from hardware, from processors. to virtual devices and virtual infrastructures, and the cloud moved that along and makes things a lot easier for us as software developers. Particularly also being able to specify infrastructure as code is something that I really, really like. So we can encode everything in the true sense of the word and deal with that. And that makes it much easier to replicate environments if you need a test environment or a preview environment. So the cloud definitely pushed this envelope a lot.
Corsin, now that we talked about cloud, one question that always comes up is, what about security? What about data privacy when you have applications in the cloud?
That's a very tricky question. I mean, you think you take your data and you give it away to a hyperscaler somewhere in a cloud. You don't even know where the data is at the end. So that's something that is a huge topic with every customer we talk to. There are a lot of techniques available there that you can use from the old data center world that are also applicable in the cloud. But the cloud providers themselves also provide a lot of new tooling to help you with that, to ensure the privacy of your data, to ensure security. There are things like you encrypt the data and the cloud provider only has the data without the key. The key you keep for yourself or in a different cloud so that you can separate these things. That's a possibility there. And there are actually a lot of these tools around. The hyperscaler they know about that and they provide a lot of tooling there. And actually, you could also argue that moving your data to the cloud makes it more secure because there's tooling available there that you could never afford in your own data center, in your own house, because you don't have the economy of scale of the big hyperscalers, of the Amazons and Googles and Microsofts. So that makes it much easier to leverage those tools. But you need to know what those tools are and you need to use them properly. Mm-hmm.
And I can imagine that there are certain industries that are quite sensitive to this topic. I mean, look at health industry, where there's health data provided, or the financial services industry. And I remember there's a lot of discussions where companies are not, or financial service companies don't want to go directly from an on-prem data center to a cloud just because of these topics. Is there specific solutions for these type of industries?
It depends on the industry, but there are certifications of specific industries. There are standard specific controls and security measures that are used in those industries. So that really depends on what the fields are. But in the medical environment, there's HIPAA and HL7. And I think in the financial industry, there are local standards and specifications. Also things like PCI that is very relevant for us, the payment card industry. Standards that help us to ensure that our systems are safe there. And the hyperscalers support those, and the certification are always on a solution, but they provide the building blocks that make it much easier for software providers like us to get certifications in these fields.
And if I am a bank and I underlie a certain regulatory topics are a very big topic, of course, for banks, right? Then this can be done also from a hyperscaler point of view.
This can be done from a hyperscaler view. In some instances, you can even do more, like I said, because there's the economy of scale. So the hyperscalers provide building blocks that we did not have in our own data centers, or the banks didn't have or couldn't afford in their own data centers. And with hyperscalers, we can implement those measures and those controls.
Coming back to the financial service industries and also others, so the idea of chatbots that are enabled with large language models seems to be a big thing. Many people talk about it. On the other hand, there's also regulatory. There are certain things a chatbot must not say. For example, giving a consumer recommendation, what kind of stock to buy, right? How is that evolving in your view?
Yeah, there are a lot of frameworks that we need to take care of their privacy and regulations and what is allowed and what is not allowed, but maybe also what the financial institution wants the chatbot to answer. There were cases, I think the airline example was one where a chatbot gave an answer to an end customer that turned out to be wrong. And the company was still liable in the end for the advice that the chatbot had given. So there's a big topic. And there's a lot of tooling that is created around that. I mean, we think of ChatGPT, that's one thing, one black box. But there's actually a whole ecosystem of tooling around large language models There are setups like one large language model observing the output of the other large language model to make sure it's accurate and it's not telling the wrong things. So there's really interesting stuff that is being developed there, and that we also try to leverage in our products to ensure this compliance with regulatory demands.
But would you say it's already mature enough for day-to-day usage?
It depends on the use cases. There are things that I would personally not do yet. We have to wait a couple of months, couple of years there maybe. It really depends on the risk, and that's in the end, it's an assessment of the risk. What do you risk in terms of the output of the chatbot? What can you accept, what not? Is there still a human in the loop? Or, do I talk directly to an AI system and I get the output unfiltered that comes out there? Or is it more a system that supports a human agent and I actually have a conversation with a human and there's just support there? I think especially in the financial services advice area, this is still the setup that we prefer. But maybe that changes in 2 weeks, in 3 weeks, in a couple of months or years.
How do you see the future of AI actually from a software development point of view? Does it make the life of the software developer easier?
It makes it easier and it makes it more difficult. There are two sides to this topic. Easier because as software developers, we are also users of AI. ChatGPT, there are specialized tools like GitHub Copilot. JetBrains, the vendor of our IDE, also has products there that help developers. Writing code, creating code, reviewing code, making sure it's safe and secure and follows certain standards. So there's a lot of tooling there that we can also use, and that makes our lives easier and makes us more productive and more efficient, and if used correctly also helps us to write better quality code. But then on the other side, we also have requirements from customers, from end users who want to use all this nice AI tooling, large language models that you mentioned, in their products. So we have to build it into the products that we create. And that's tricky for developers because AI is really different from software development as I learned it at university. There's programming languages and you write everything yourself. The intelligent part, that's you. It's not artificial. It's natural, or maybe it's something you need to learn. And now we have to have all these tooling. So we need to learn what these technologies are. Not everybody needs to go very, very deep in and become an AI specialist, but we need to know how to learn what the limitations of those tools are, what they can do today, what is maybe only possible a couple of years from now, and how we can integrate it into our systems in a way that is sustainable and that really creates value for the end users. Because that's what it's all about. We don't create software for ourselves. We create it for an end user in mind, and we need to create value there.
Separate topic. How do you personally use AI? I'm curious, Corsin.
I probably don't use it enough. I definitely, when I have the chance to develop code, which doesn't happen very often, but when I have that, I use the built-in tools in my development environments, things like GitHub Copilot, JetBrains, AI, things like that. I'm still playing around with the tooling a bit to see which one suits me best and works best and is good value for money. And then ChatGPT, of course, for the more mundane use cases. That's still the go-to tool there.
Yeah, and I can tell you from personal experience, I used it for the first time for writing a love poem for my wife. And the outcome was actually not so bad. So it works. Do you think about certain use cases that become relevant now, using AI technologies that were not there before, that can be now employed in the future?
One use case specifically that I'm very interested in, because I work in a customer product in this area, is figuring out what a document is. Imagine you get a paper document. Yes, they still exist. They are scanned and you have a digital version of it, but you want to figure out what it is for a specific customer. Is it a cancellation? Is it an address change? Something like that. That really helps us to use AI to figure out what is this document. Because if we know that, we can index it and we can put it and start a process behind it that we can automate partially. But we need to know what it is. And that's today in this particular system is the limiting factor. We need a human being to look at this document and tell us, that's an address change. And if we can automate that, it makes us more efficient, and it speeds up the processing time of this letter a lot. So that's a specific use case.
And that's a huge value, I can imagine.
Absolutely. Yeah, especially if you multiply it and think it's not one document, it's a couple of hundred every day.
Now let's look a little bit into the future then. I mean, what do you believe the world will look like then in 5-10 years from now? And do you anticipate also things that are going to happen there when you think from your perspective as a CTO of a large software company?
That's part of the job, that we try to think of the future and see developments, how that moves. Unfortunately, or maybe also fortunately, there's a lot of disruption. I mean, large language models, I think if you're not really in that field following this trend very closely, most of us were not aware that this would be such a disruptive change. So that's the tricky thing, to look out what is there. There's also a lot of hype that pops up that you just need to ignore, otherwise you're spread yourself too thin. So that's the tricky bit, to figure out what are the signals in the whole noise, what are relevant things for us. There's also a lot of technical developments that are not relevant for the type of work that we do, and trying to figure that out, that is really tricky. Fortunately, I don't have to do that alone. I mean, it's something I really like to do, but I have 800 plus colleagues who help a lot with that and also give signals to me what I should look into and what could be interesting trends for the future.
Now, you give me here a wonderful runway for a personal question I wanted to actually ask you, because in your role as a CTO and in the environment you just shared, which is quite versatile, a lot of new developments, how do you really keep your focus?
I try to pick things that really interest me and that I think could be useful for the company. But I also consider it part of my job that I cannot be too focused or too narrow-minded just looking at specific things. We have a lot of technical experts who do that, who go really, really deep and know the technologies by heart. I see my job more also as having the overview of things that are out there. Of course, I don't know them as deep as most of my colleagues, but that's my job, to keep the overview and to make connections between them. That's how I see my
Connecting the dots. That's wonderful. Now, and one more question I have regarding this, also personal again, there's so many things happening. I guess this still excites you as it did 20 years ago, but what really excites you in this realm of software development here?
Absolutely. Technology itself is something that fascinates me, what you can do with software. If you think, where do you have the possibility to write a couple of lines of code and really change the lives of hundreds and thousands of people? That's a multiplication factor, what software really can do. And that always fascinated me much more than you can do with craftsmanship or all the jobs that we had in the past. So that's something that I like. And I like the technology aspect of it. What our tools are there, what kind of possibilities that you have, and how can you turn that into value for someone who's not a software developer. That's the other aspect that really fascinates me. Not just technology for the sake of technology, but technology to solve a problem or make the life of someone easier and nicer.
So creating value with software, what a wonderful theme here for our discussion as we close now. Thank you very much, Corsin. It was really exciting to have you and to hear from your personal experience what is currently happening in this industry, how is it going to evolve, what are the key technologies. It was a pleasure having you, Corsin. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me. Thanks for the discussion.